We're hoping that you will ask your questions as they pop into your heads and drop them into the meeting chat. It's going to be super useful, and we will do our best to answer those all at the end of the presentation. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. And if we don't get to you during the presentation, no fears, we will make sure everyone gets answered after the presentation as well. So let's go ahead and move on into today's content. So Matt, would you like to start us off by talking about IT Fusion?
Yeah, so IT Fusion is a joint venture between 4 local IT companies who you probably got an invitation from one of them. So the CPU Squad, O&A Technologies, MK Tech Group, and Night Owl. And we've created a joint venture to help our clients improve their security stance and also to help us work for larger clients. Combined, our 7 members have more than 140 years of IT experience. If we can go to the next slide. Jamie, yeah. So our 4 principles, well, you've already been introduced to me. I have over 30 years of professional IT experience and a former Fortune 200 IT architect. We have Lorenzo Martinez, president of O&A Technologies with almost 35 years of IT experience. Wally Sharif with Night Owl, who has over 20 years of IT experience, and Rami Smitty with the CPU Squad with over 15 years of IT experience. They're on the call today, and they'll be the ones who'll be following up with you afterwards based on who you signed up through.
So Matt, you did something really interesting that I can't wait to get into. You did some dark web findings for the whole group here today. You want to talk about those?
Yeah, so we offered to do dark web scans for the first 50 companies that signed up. We've got some good news. We oversold. So we had more than 50 companies sign up. So the remaining members, we will get to you. We have extended the free dark web scan, but it's going to take us a couple weeks to get to you. So don't worry, we will get to you. But what we found was 77% of you who signed up had credentials exposed for sale on the dark web. That means 3 out of 4 of this group of people who are on this call and everyone who registered have 1 or more credentials that's for sale out on the dark web. And the average company that had a credential exposed had 35 credentials exposed. So it wasn't just 1 or 2, the average company had 35. And the most we had for any one company that was on the call was 138 credentials exposed. So keeping track of what's going on for the dark web is interesting, and we will have an offer at the end to help you monitor what's going on in the dark web. So that's some of the numbers we found. If you signed up today, your numbers are not included in here. We ran this report yesterday, so those are our up-to-date numbers as of last night.
So I find those numbers really fascinating because it speaks to the current state of cybersecurity today. We're at a spot where the average cost of a malware attack on a company is $2.6 million. Now, of course, that includes all business, right? So big ones, little ones, all in between. But if that's the average, that's an alarming statistic, right? And a statistic not shown here is that cybercrime is actually an industry, $3.1 trillion actually. So these groups that are buying and selling those credentials on the dark web are highly, highly organized. Each person is specialized, and maybe someone excels at breaking into a computer. Maybe someone excels at using that access to hunt information. Maybe someone else just manages those databases that are for sale on the dark web. But these criminals are organized, and they are organized because of all of this money that's floating around. The average cost of lost business after an attack is $1.42 million. And 84% of IT service providers, like the IT Fusion Group, are reporting that small to mid-sized businesses need to be very, very concerned about ransomware, right? So the only other really statistic that I wanted to lift up on this page is this 43%. 43% of breach victims are actually small business. So a lot of times you'll come to these cyber presentations and folks will talk about what happened to like Target and Home Depot and, Garmin. And, I'm no different. I can talk about those things too. But at the end of the day, the type of tradecraft that's used to breach those large markets are the same that breach the small ones. It's just easier to do on the smaller businesses. And that's why we need to take these numbers really seriously. Matt, do you have anything more you want to add to this slide?
No, I think that covers it. We've seen all of us on this call who are IT providers have dealt with ransomware in the last year, and some companies getting multiple attacks of ransomware in the last year. So it's something that's very important for us to do, and it impacts your business. I think the biggest piece here is reputational damage, but Jamie, what other damages do you see to business?
Yeah, so, a ransomware attack, of course, has an instant financial ramification, either rebuilding after the fact if you refuse to pay the ransom, lost revenue that you can't generate during the attack. And then also if you do pay the ransom, you of course have that number to pay as well. All of that damages your reputation regardless of your ability to recover. I think a lot of times these middle two items, the disruption of their operations and the insurance exposure, are overlooked. Folks don't really think about the impact of that on their business, but your operations being disrupted is traumatic for everyone involved. Your customers don't get, the care they're used to from you. Your employees get stressed and they don't know if you're going to be able to pay them, and just everyone is on edge in these kind of situations. And so we really need to take cybersecurity seriously, not just because of the financial loss or the reputational damage, but because of the deep impact it has across the board.
Yeah, Jenny, also on the insurance exposure, what we're seeing are two trends with insurance right now. One is denial of claims because companies didn't take reasonable precautions to protect their systems. So when you sign your insurance, you have to take reasonable precautions. And if you're not doing that, they'll deny the claim. And the second thing is clients not being able to renew their insurance at the end of the term after a claim. So just because you got insurance, if you're not taking the right steps, you can still be in jeopardy of having to pay those. Jamie?
Absolutely. I think that's a really great point to lift up because, sometimes there's a sense of, oh, I've got insurance. It's no big deal. Insurance is not a magic wand that fixes everything, right? It's still definitely a hassle, and it may not be there if you need it. And from my own personal experience, I know that it's always a financial hit, even if insurance is there to keep me from going completely underwater. I had a recent experience with my car, so I can speak to that from a real life scenario. So ultimately, what we're here to do today is to help you take your businesses back from the cyber criminals. It is crazy what's going on in this world, and it's really unfair. There's no reason why this should be going on to the point that it is. And what we want to do is arm you with the tools you need to win that unfair fight. Cybersecurity is about finding that right balance between the ease of business and controlling access to that business. That's why having partners in this, like the group with IT Fusion, is so important because they can help you pick the right solutions and put them in place in a practical way that will help you not only secure your business, but keep things moving as well, right? Is there anything, Matt, you want to add before we launch into some of these strategies that businesses can use?
Not right now.
Excellent. So really, one of the first things that any business can do to help immediately improve their security is reduce access. It is possible with computers these days to scan the entire internet in like a matter of minutes, right? So there are powerful computers that you push the go button and it's just going to start scanning, looking for vulnerabilities anywhere in the world across the internet. And in order to make sure that you're not falling victim to breaches, you need to make sure that you're not on those lists. So we'll talk more about that at the end of the show. We've got some tools that you can use to protect yourselves. But steps you can take to help keep you secure is scan for vulnerabilities. Know if you're exposed externally or internally. You need also to partner with an IT company that will help you understand your risk. So that doesn't mean only, scanning for vulnerabilities and patching those, but understanding what assets you have and what the impact would be if you lose those assets. You also need to make sure you are using business quality network equipment, because it's going to make handling all of this access control a whole lot easier. Your network equipment, switches, firewalls, internet, wireless access points, that kind of stuff is really the first line of defense between you and the big bad internet, right? So make sure you're using good products that you can control and lock down. You also, if you have a need to remote into your office from outside of your office, which with COVID, I think we all have that need, right, Matt? These days, using a secure way to make that connection is crucial. We have seen over the past several months of since the work at home craze, I would say, we've seen breaches involving remote access just skyrocket. And then finally, you've got to just do your very basic blocking access to known bad sites so that if you have a user in your environment who accidentally clicks something, your tools can actually automatically protect you from that a lot of times. Matt, do you have some stories or any insight for just reducing access and how important that is to business?
Well, yeah, one of our clients, a way we often see is called remote desktop protocol. And sometimes companies will expose that protocol out to the internet. And that's the one that allows you to take over another computer as if you were sitting in front of it. And we've had a client, a new client who previously got exposed twice in the past year through a RDP connection. And so we block RDP connections. He now connects through a virtual private network with authentication. We know who's coming in, we know when they're coming in, when they're leaving, and it doesn't expose that to anybody else. So his internal network is no longer exposed to the internet.
I like that you brought up RDP, the remote desktop protocol, because we're actually a lot of times seeing these organized hacker groups, the ones that are ransomwaring, businesses and cities. They're using RDP and they are simply dragging and dropping their malware toolkits onto the desktops of their victims. Now, the way they get that access varies from site to site, case to case, but it is extremely critical to secure those access points, because you can't hurt something if you can't get to it, right? So that's rule number one: control the access. Next is, I think, related to access, but it's complicated enough that it gets its very own area to talk about, because email rules all of our lives. I don't want to think about my inbox right now. I'm sure I'm not alone. There's other folks on this group that have emails they need to get to during this presentation, after this presentation, right? So we need to make sure that we are teaching each and every employee that they have a role and a responsibility in protecting their network. And they can do that by implementing really smart and safe email practices. We cannot rely alone on our email filters. Email filters are great. They reduce the amount of spam and the potential damaging email that comes in, but they don't eliminate it. You have to let email into your business if you're going to be able to communicate with your customers, right? So we want to teach each user about phishing. And that means looking at the email address, like actually reading the email address where the message is from. Being cautious when there are, urgent subject lines like need help now, urgent, important, hurry, all of those kind of words are commonly used by hackers to help torpedo you into emotionally responding rather than thinking about your response to an email. Pay attention to grammar and spelling. Now, I will say that grammar and spelling, I mean, I personally have a loosey-goosey relationship with the English language, so this is not a be-all, end-all rule, but bad translation is a thing with phishing emails. And if something is out of character for the person who sent it to you, that could be an indicator that it wasn't them, right? And then professional businesses like corporate emails like FedEx and Amazon that are commonly mocked in these types of generic phishing attacks, they're not going to have spelling errors, right? So pay attention. Next, don't click links in email. And I know everyone knows that it's 2021. We all know we're not supposed to be clicking links. And yet I think a lot of people still do it, right? They'll see an email that comes from their bank and they'll just be like, bam, I'll click that. Now, what I want to urge you guys to do is make a resolution this year to stop clicking links in emails, even if you know it's a good source, even if it's from me. I want you to travel to the site yourself, open your browser, type in where I'm asking you to go and do it that way, okay? If I get an email from my bank, I am not clicking that link. There shouldn't even be a link in it. I'm going to my bank and I'm opening it up, okay? So I'm preaching, but don't click on links in emails. Finally, you really need to report any questionable emails to your team and to your IT partner, okay? Because you might see something, it might be obvious spam to you. You've got a whole crowd of coworkers usually who would benefit from that knowledge, right? So report it to your peers and report it to IT so that they can address it, and be on the lookout for anyone who might have clicked. And then finally, when in doubt, just call the sender and ask. I get emails all the time from my coworkers where it's like, Jamie, look at this. And it's just that and a link. I don't just auto open those, even though they're from my colleagues, because I am never going to assume that their computer hasn't been compromised. I ask them, hey, did you just send me something? And we do this, I do this every single time. And I wish we didn't live like this, but we do. Matt, do you have anything you want to add to email?
Yeah, so a couple of things. One, Janine just put in there, don't email them back to see if it was them.
Because they'll tell you.
Yeah, because they're like, oh yeah, of course it's me. If they compromised your email, then you're sending it back to the wrong address. But our number one source of breaches last year by far was email. Mm-hmm. And by far it was people clicking on links and entering credentials. And that's how those credentials show up on the dark web, because they're capturing your credentials. And they may not do anything with them today. They're just capturing them so they can sell them. People are like, well, what's in it for them to capture your credentials? They're available from anywhere from $5 for just a name and email address and password to over $100 for what they call a full profile, which would allow someone to do a complete complete identity theft. And I know we've got Plenio Vargas on the call, and I know he's seen that, with people getting identity theft, and because those are sold for $100 to $150, complete information on many, many people.
Absolutely. So next up on our list of things to talk about is passwords. And we were just actually chatting about this before our presentation today, because passwords are just so complex now. I counted up a year ago, I counted up the number of online accounts that I had, and I was over 86. I know that's over 100 now. I just haven't audited it recently. And so there's a habit that a lot of folks use, and that is to use the same password on all of their webs, every account that you have. And that is why these credentials that are being bought and sold online, and why this dark web scan that Matt did for the group today is so important, because if you are using the same email address and password in combination for more than one site, and a hacker steals it from Hulu or Facebook or something like that, they can then use those same credentials to log in all over. And that is really, really scary, especially when we start to move into a business world. So the ways we protect ourselves from that are using some smart password steps. The first is using multi-factor authentication. So forgive me for shortening it to MFA on the slide, but it simply means that to log in, you need to do 2 separate types of tasks. So you have to enter a password and receive a code to a device or a separate account, right? And then enter that code. And when you have multi-factor authentication enabled, it makes it harder to steal your access. Not impossible, but harder. Passwords also need to be strong. I know so many people are just using password 1 exclamation mark or some variation, and there are literally databases of passwords available online. And so we need to be very careful about that. We need to use pass phrases even. Matt, do you want to talk about how to make a good passphrase?
Yeah, a good passphrase is going to contain four random things that mean something to you. Mm-hmm. Not your mother's maiden name, not your high school, not that publicly identifiable information, but 4 things that mean something to you that are completely separate. And then you throw a couple of characters in there. So the most common one that they use in training, so don't use this one, is horse battery staple remover, okay? So it's like 4 words that don't mean anything. You put them in a random order, and it's actually much harder to get those because there's no pattern. So passphrases for those systems that support them are a really good thing. And so one of our clients, we put a passphrase on his Wi-Fi. And he's like, that's really long. And I'm like, yeah, no one who needs to, actually, I think he's on the call today. Nobody who needs that password is going to ever who doesn't need that password is going to ever guess that password or come up with that through a random search. It's going to take way too long for them to do it. Most of these cyber criminals are lazy. And that's out of efficiency. If you make it too hard for them, it's not that they can't get in. It's just that there's so many people they can get in, they'll go past you and go to somebody who's easier to get in.
So another thing to do is also create a reasonable rotation, especially for your most critical sites. And when I say rotation, I mean changing your passwords on a regular basis. This does add complexity. It's already hard to remember your passwords. We're saying you need to use, a long one, and you need to use a different one for every site. And you've got over 100, accounts. So the next question is, how is any human going to remember all these passwords? And honestly, I can't, right? Matt, I don't know. Can you remember hundreds of passwords? Yeah. So the best way to do it is just use a password management software, and instantly, I'm sure a couple of you at least are thinking of it like, aren't those insecure? Like, what happens if a hacker gets into that, And ultimately, they are much, 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 much more secure than you trying to do it on your own self. And the worst that happens is you lose access to your passwords. They're typically handled very well, where you're not going to ever have your passwords stolen. But what you can do is maybe lose access to them, in which case you just reset your passwords. It's no big deal, right? So someone in the chat just dropped, using a paper binder with coffee stains on it isn't a secure form of storing your passwords. Hey, you know what? No, it's not ideal. Someone could steal that paper binder, or you could lose it or dump the whole pot of coffee on it, right? So definitely not the way to go. Use a password manager. They're smart, they're safe, and they're super useful. So that's my last advice on that one. We do need to get into the idea of patching, and this is where you have to have an IT service provider that's competent and has the tools in place to keep your network equipment, your systems up to date, and you have to make a investment and a plan on how you're going to manage that moving forward, because this is what hackers do. Hackers figure out a vulnerability, right? And they use that and they'll exploit it to break into your network. And then the company that is, managing that system that's been exploited fixes it, and they send out the patch. Right? And so everyone needs to update their system to apply that patch. If you don't apply that, you are leaving little gaps in your security all over the place. And while this might seem like no big deal, is actually a massive deal. And I don't remember the exact statistic, but an alarming number of breaches are caused because a hacker comes in through some door that's been left open. Okay. Don't leave doors open for the bad guys. Right, Matt?
Yeah, and if you are in a sensitive industry that has to meet certain security requirements like NIST, if you work with Department of Defense or anyone with the federal government, if you have to meet HIPAA requirements, and those are probably the two most common down here, and you're not patching, you're in violation of those security requirements.
So ultimately, we've been talking about security today, and I think a lot of folks forget about backup and disaster recovery when they're thinking about security. But I will lift it up that it is a very important part of your security plan because it's your business security. It's your ability to recover and bounce back when something goes wrong, and having a appropriate backup and more importantly, appropriate recovery points. So I don't know that anyone really, IT providers think about this, but I think a lot of times customers think, oh, well, I back up my data, once a night or once a week. So that's probably good. Well, think about how much work you do during the day to feed that into that data, right? If you had to redo an entire day's worth of work, how bad is that going to set you back? So I want you guys to consider, your backups, are they broad enough that you can get all of your applications and critical business functions running in a disaster or a worst case scenario? And then is your recovery points, how far you have to go back in time, are those appropriate as well? And working with IT company to help you make those decisions is going to be a really good thing to do. So Matt, anything to add to backups?
Yeah, so what I could say is for our fully managed clients, we back up at least hourly.
Yeah.
So if something goes wrong, there's an hour's worth of work that might have to be redone. For some of our larger environments, we'll back up as often as every 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Daily doesn't cut it anymore. So, you can lose a lot of data and a lot of integrity in 24 hours. So look at those recovery points are really one. And the other thing is you want to make sure that you're not just having the backups, but testing them on a regular basis.
And now I think that this world we live in with COVID has pushed us to think beyond just backup as far as, making sure your data is available, but back up to think, what happens in a disaster, what happens in a situation where we suddenly have to change the way we work, right? So I really like introducing this idea of maintaining a dispersed workforce plan. If for some reason we can't come into the office via a disaster at the office, bad weather, or, a pandemic. What does that dispersed workforce look like? And I think having plans for all of those scenarios is just a crucial part of your security and your overall technology approach. So the last thing I want to talk about before demonstrating some of the ways that you can protect yourself and some of the new services that are available to protect yourself is antivirus. Of course, you want to use a good program that is going to automatically stop bad things from running on your systems, right? Using antivirus is really important and crucial, and everyone does it now. I will say, though, that I have talked to business owners before that feel like, they've got a firewall in place and they've got antivirus running, and so they're fixed, like they're secure, And what I think we've talked about today is there are a number of other ways that bad guys can get into an environment. And our days of relying on these automated systems alone they're just over, and they have been over for a long time. So what we have done is we have offered a new way to protect businesses against, all of these different threats by offering a 24/7 security operations and incident response platform called Managed Detection and Response. And what we do with Managed Detection and Response is exactly what it sounds like. We detect the bad guys as they're acting in the environment, and we respond to it. So that 24/7, you've got peace of mind of knowing your network is protected. Matt, so you had a story that you shared a little bit about earlier, talking about that RDP breach. Can
Yeah.
you talk a little bit about what happened in that?
Yeah, absolutely. Before we get there, I just want you to think of
Mhm.
your house and your security in your house.
Yeah.
Okay. If you have a firewall, that's kind of like the gate that lets people in your community, right? So if you're in a
Mhm.
gated community, somebody's there stopping them at the gate, but if they pass those credentials, they get through. Well, now your front door is your antivirus. If you don't have antivirus, you're just leaving your front door and your garage open. But you also have windows. You also have, side doors. You have a lot of different places that people can get in that we need to protect. So I got called into a situation earlier this year. If we can go ahead and go to the next slide.
Yeah.
And Wally's actually very familiar with this. Uh, it was a medical office. The doctor had remote desktop protocol exposed to the internet. Somebody got in and got a breach onto his system. And so now what do? They go, okay, I've got access to his system. And the first thing they do is say, what level of privileges do I have? Okay, so if they've got sufficient privileges, which in this case they did, then they start to say, what else is on the network? I'm inside. Now, what can I do? Oh, I've got administrative privileges. So now they got to the server where all of the data and the applications are served. And they continue to find out what they could do. And they actually waited several days before they triggered their activity. So they were in the network deciding what they could do. And the other thing they were doing is they were copying the doctor's medical records. So they were copying the database files. And then the doctor got a ransomware. And I think in that case, it was a $28,000 request for data. The doctor ended up paying $18,000 to get his data back. We didn't have to pay the cyber criminal, but we had to pay a forensic company to come in and recover those files, which we fortunately were able to do without paying the cyber criminal.
Right.
We've done some more work since then, but that's how it started. It wasn't it wasn't like a street robbery where the guy says, give me your wallet, and then he runs away. So this is a guy who's draining pennies from your bank account until all of a sudden he takes every cent you have. And that's exactly what we happen. The average we're seeing is sometimes up to 90 days. So SolarWinds made huge noise, okay? They were in SolarWinds for well over a year. We don't know how long. We know at least a year before they dropped their data in, and then they stayed quiet and didn't do anything else until it infected all of SolarWinds customers.
Right. And so that that story that you outlined is exactly the way we see hackers working, and it's really interesting. I've not been in technology as long as the rest of the folks on this call. I'm measuring mine in years still, and you guys have decades on me, which is awesome. But even in the time that I have been taking care of business leaders and helping them secure their networks, I have seen a massive shift in the type of threats that we are protecting our clients against. When I first started, we were protecting them against pop-ups that would come up on their machines, things, viruses that would make their computers run funny and slow, and these were really productivity killers. Now we're seeing attacks that are ransomwaring entire networks, stealing data, stealing intellectual property. So if you have, an industry that is reliant on their secret sauce, right? Their plans for a particular thing that's getting stolen. And it's all because of that money I talked about earlier, that $1.3 trillion that are at stake for these cyber criminals is what's driving this. So what we did is to make sure we really understood how hackers are working. so that we have tools in place to protect against those drive-bys or the what did you call it? The street robbery kind of attack. You know, you've got your antivirus that's pretty good at protecting you against that. You've got your firewalls that's pretty good from stopping that guy that's just in passing gonna, you know, reach out and punch you, you know. But what we needed to do is we needed to up the game and to be able to see, you know, the behavior when someone breaks in. So in this case with the doctor's office where the initial intrusion occurred and then the person began to explore where they had landed in the environment. This enumeration phase is a critical point in the hacker timeline because at this point, all of those protection mechanisms have failed and the guys inside the network and they are looking through your network trying to figure out how to spread laterally without setting off any other alerts, right? And because of that, they are often able to complete their objective, you know, which might be stealing data or ransomwaring the environment or some combination thereof. So what we have done is we have focused on making sure that our tools are going to not only help protect and keep you, you know, safe, but they have the technology in place to actually spot that behavior so that we prevent you from falling victim to this kind of an attack. And I can show you guys exactly what I'm talking about so it's not theoretical. Let me switch my screen really quick. And we will now move over to this computer. Guys, Matt, will you let me know is email open for
Yes.
Peter Gibbons on this computer? Yep. Okay. So what we're going to do today is actually, we are going to take a look behind the scenes and you're going to see how the good guys fight off the hackers in real time. So I'm really excited to share this with you. This is our security operations and network or security operation system. And what we're going to do to start this is actually make all these alerts go away. This is a noisy demo environment and I'm going to resolve all of these so that we are starting with a blank slate. All right. So now when we go back over to our network map here, you're going to see a network as it should be, right? Everything is quiet. There's no flashy lights. This is a relatively small business. There's only 13 computers in the environment, right? And you've got some off on their own little networks and some all in the office, okay? So very traditional environment that we might expect to see. What we're going to do today is we're going to attack this Tech4 computer, all right? So this computer is open on my machine, and this computer is used by a character named Felix. Felix Miller gets an email from his buddy, Peter Gibbons. And if you guys were paying attention earlier when we were talking about email security, you should already be screaming at me that this is a phishing email, right? We have an urgent tagline. We have an email address that is obviously not Peter Gibbons, right? But because of that urgent headline, Felix falls for it. He opens the email attachment. And if you could all, you know, as I do this, shout with me, don't do it, Felix. I'm going to enable.
Never enable macros.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Okay.
It literally says security warning.
So Felix ignored the security warnings despite our pleas. And now Windows has popped up a little normal, you know, looking CRED window. Oh, and I lost my access. We scared Felix off with the live demo there. Hold on, it'll restart in a second. Oh, loading, and it'll drop us right back where we were. So no big deal. All right. So we've got our CRED harvesting window and Felix falls for it. Now, even if Felix closed this out and was like, I don't know, this looks suspicious to me, I'm calling sus and I'm not typing this in. It's already too late. At this point, the hacker's just making their life easier by trying to trick Felix into giving the password. They might already have his password, right? From a dark web scan, or they might just wait and use a program to steal it later. But we're going to fall for it. And what happened behind the scenes was that we actually kicked off a scheduled task. So now the hacker can get back into Felix's computer anytime he wants, even if the machine's been turned off. And we have performed some reconnaissance on this computer. And those two steps gives the hacker a lot of information about the computer. So if we pretend we're the hacker right now, we can actually see behind the scenes at what the hackers can see. So I am connecting to the C2 server, and this is the hacker's computer now. And from that one bad email, Felix has just given away his username and his password. It was a super secure password. Change me, exclamation mark. All right. He has admin credentials, and now the hacker knows that they have admin credentials. The hacker can see all of the other devices that are on the network, and the hacker knows that RDP is open. So if the hacker wanted to, he could just connect via RDP section to the computer. All right. So this is what the hackers are seeing when they actually breach your network. And then they use that information against you. So that was the hacker view. This is Felix's view. Now let's see what the good guys see. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to watch in real time as these alerts pop in. You see the RDP sessions arise in real time. And we also see this share success. So we see the hacker testing their credentials and moving out in the environment. And then we see some other alerts. I won't get too far into the technical details for today, but we are seeing the suspicious behavior happen in real time on the computer. And the importance of seeing this behavior is seeing allows us to take action and stop it. Is like having a smoke detector in your house. We all know that the faster we locate the source of the smoke and solve that problem, the better, right? The other day, we were looking around for that odd smell at my house, and my daughter had a short in her lava lamp. So I was much happier to find it by using my nose than to wait until there were flames shooting out somewhere. Cybersecurity is the exact same. We want to start seeing these behaviors as they come in because we can actually take action to stop it. So if we watch this malicious process actually start, what we're going to do is we're going to review the activity as it happens, and we are going to kill the malicious processes in real time. And I will scroll down. You don't have to be too technical to see what's happening right here. You see Outlook open, then you see Excel open, and then you see Excel begin to run some other child processes. These numbers are important because these are your process IDs. And what we will do in real time is we'll kill that process so that we know, oh, this is bad. Let's end it and we'll stop it in real time. So we also have the ability, if the machine gets completely owned, we have the ability to come in here and actually detain it and protect it from the network. So we'll shut down the internet connection so it can't be used to harm the machine. And we'll send the user an alert on their computer that lets them know, hey, we had to detain your machine. Maybe you shouldn't have enabled that macro, you know. And then we're going to work with Matt and his group to reach out to you and support it in real time. So we are able to affect change in the environment in real time. We're able to protect it. We're able to have those smoke detectors in place so that you don't get stuck falling victim to one of these attacks. Matt, do you have any questions before I close this down and we open it up for question and answer?
No, Jamie, I think this is so important because this is information that you, no matter how careful you are, you can't see what's going on. Right. And you need someone who's dedicated 24/7. This is like having a security guard and dogs walking your property 24/7. They're going to find the things that your automated systems aren't going to find. One of the things a lot of IT companies do is they do what's called log analysis. And log analysis is important. It's not a bad thing to do. But that's like the police coming in afterwards and saying, okay, somebody broke in, let's find the fingerprints, let's find everything. Whereas a security guard stops them before they get in. So that's the difference. You're hiring a security guard versus hiring the police afterwards to clean up. So I think that's the most important message there. But we do have a couple of special offers after we go through the question and answer. So let's see if we have any other questions there. You know, Naive commented that she had something like this happen today. She didn't click the attachment, but the attachment tried to open a PDF anyway. So one of the things we're seeing is even in a preview situation, certain actions can take place even if you don't click on anything. So protecting your email, and there are tools out there to help you protect your email, and they do technical things like rewrite the links and sandboxing that we can explain to you on a one-on-one basis. But those are additional steps that can help protect you from threats through email. What other sneaky ways have you seen, Jamie, that people are getting in that people don't realize they did something wrong?
Yeah, so there's the most common really is the coming in through a vulnerability in like the firewall. I mean, email is 100% the most commonly used, but right after that, it's remote access. Someone's credentials get stolen. The hacker, comes in through a vulnerability and is just there inside the network using basic Windows tools against the users, and no one knows,
Jamie, I want to add to that one.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, that was,
yeah.
I had someone literally send a video in of the live hack, and the way they did it is they exposed their copier company came in and created a user on the server called scans. Username was scans, password was scans. So they make it easy for them to get those credentials so that the copier can scan to the server. And they had RDP open. It was a walk in the park. The guy sent a video on how he did it and showed us what he used. Yeah. I mean, this is not hard stuff to do, and it's easy accessible. These hackers, like they said, they're lazy. They're just looking for the easy stuff. Yep. And he got in and disabled the firewall and the antivirus because he had admin rights, put his ransomware right on the desktop, literally double clicked it, everything got encrypted.
Yeah. And that, I love hate that story, right? Because it illustrates a couple of things for me. It illustrates how prevalent this stuff is and how easy it is to do. But then it also illustrates that it's usually not just one problem, right? You had a outside vendor that you didn't necessarily have direct control over make changes on your network that introduced a vulnerability that no one knew was there, right? And then you had another vulnerability of the exposed RDP, right, that was exposed and used as the way in. Those two things together, led to disaster. And then all the security tools were turned off. There's three things in there. It's just all orchestrated. And that's why we watch the behavior inside the network. We look at the users inside. So if there are any more questions, now is a great time. Matt, while we're waiting to see if any more questions come in, do you want to talk about these next steps that folks can do if they liked what they heard today?
Absolutely. So there's two things that we have to offer with you. So first, if you were among the first 50 who responded, one of us will be reaching out to you to go over the results of your dark web scan. We've already done that with a few people so far on the phone. The second thing we'll be doing is we will be offering you dark web scanning on a regular monthly basis. And it's composed with three things. We're going to monitor the dark web for you 24/7 for watching for credentials. We will do security awareness training. So we will drop videos to your staff to help them become more aware of security awareness. And the third thing we'll do is we'll actually test your employees. So we'll send them emails that they shouldn't click on. And if they click on, we'll record it and let you know who clicked on it. Now, I will tell you, just please don't be one of these. the most common person to click on the email are the people who are on these calls. It's the owners of the business, even if they know they're coming. I've had someone go, oh, I clicked on this. Should I have done that? And it will actually tell them in real time that they shouldn't have clicked on it to help with the training. That's normally something we charge $100 a month for. Through the end of the month, if you sign up, that will be $75 per month for a company of up to 50 employees, a little bit more if you're more than 50 employees. I think most of the companies today are under 50 that are on the call. So that is one offer we have. The second thing is we will do a free vulnerability assessment for you. We can do that very easily. It does not require a lot of time or effort or energy on your part. We can do that quickly. And we have a 30-day free trial on the Blackpoint Cyber solution. And so that's no strings. And Jamie, at the end of that trial, can you tell them what else they're going to receive at the end of the 30-day trial?
Yeah, so at the end of the trial, we also will provide a ransomware readiness test. And what that test includes is basically if someone were to hack your, or attempt to do this tradecraft in your environment, how likely would it be to succeed? And, if you didn't have these tools in place, are you protected? And so it'll be really interesting for you guys to see those results, try out the solution. If you like it, you can keep it. And if you don't, then that's okay. You got information you can use to be more secure. So everything's good, right?
Absolutely. So if you're on the call today and would like to take advantage of either of those opportunities, I know my email is up there, but you can email whoever invited you to the session, whether it's Rami, Wally, or Lorenzo, and we will follow up with you as quickly as possible to get you started. We'd love to work with you. I know we're working with most of you already at some level, but this is something that we have found is critical. It's no longer becoming something that you'd like to have. It's becoming an essential part of your risk management portfolio. And cyber insurance companies are beginning to require these types of steps be taken in order to show that you're doing due diligence to protect your business. So that's it for us. We thank you so much for your time, energy. Jamie, it's been fantastic. We're going to keep the call open for the last 7 minutes. If somebody wants to pop on and ask an individual question, we'd be glad to. But otherwise, we will be following up with you as quickly as possible. And thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. And we got you out in less than an hour, which I know is very important for our busy people.
Hey, Matt, can
Yes,
we have
Randy.
a public services announcement to let people
Yes, sir.
know that OneDrive, Google Drive, Dropbox is not a real form of backup. It's a syncing tool and it can work like a backup, but if ransomware hits and encrypts all those files and then it syncs them to the cloud, it makes it so much harder to go back. And some of these companies don't have a rollback feature. So
Right.
having a separate service that copies them away from that service is the backup you need. And then those do it on an hourly basis. So just as a public service announcement, I've seen people say, oh, I thought I had a backup with OneDrive, Google Drive, Dropbox, and I got hit. It's not a real backup.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll give a hallelujah to that.
Absolutely.
I know. The
We-
biggest misconception I want to educate people on.
Also, we will be making this recording available to you if you want to go back and watch anything afterwards. So if you have any questions, please pop on your video. Let's go ahead and stop the recording now, Jamie.
All right. Yeah, I will.